In question one, the marginal revenue curve is the line underneath the demand curve. The profit maximizing price and the profit maximizing quantity is the point on the demand line or directly underneath the marginal revenue curve and the marginal cost curve meet. It's highlighted, sheen by the black lines where P max and Q max is next to. The profit is the area which defines from the point right above the where the marginal revenue and marginal cost meet from that average on the average cost curve to the demand line, and the width is from the y-axis to the demand line as well. And deadweight loss is the gray triangle right next to the profit. Question two, we're asked to consider a market like the one illustrated in 13.5 where all firms have the same average curve, cost curve. If a competitive firm in this market tries to set price above the minimum point on its average curve, they're not going to sell any quantity at all. They're going to be the consumers know the numerous substitutes, and with that they know that there are going to be substitutes that are selling their products at a lower price. However, if a monopoly did the same thing, their quantity is going to decrease until marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. Their number of units will decrease. And Part C were asked, what's the difference? Well, within the monopoly, they don't have to worry about the other firms lowering their price and stealing consumers. They are the ones in charge. They're the ones who are determining the future of this industry. So they can raise it or lower it however they want. Question three, monopolies and competitive firms follow this rule as they know as at that point, the profits they could earn are maximized. B, we can assume if we look at the graph that it's going to be at the left if the marginal cost is very low. So we can assume that the marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost. C, the marginal revenue will fall as we're moving to the right, so the revenue will fall. But if they're right and we make a lot, the profits would rise. If the profits do rise, then the total revenue will rise as a result. Part D, in this case, it means that it would have to move to the left. So we could assume that the marginal revenue is less than marginal cost in this case.
Moving to question 4, part A, we know that monopolists charge a higher markup when demand is highly inelastic, or in other words, that the product is necessary for consumers and is difficult to find substitutes for. Part B is similar to Part A. We know that monopolists charge a higher markup when there are few substitutes, as consumers have nowhere else to turn if prices go up. Part C deals with a few more specific situations. Looking at trendy shoes versus tennis shoes, we know that trendy shoes are going to sell for much more because there were fewer substitutes, while the tennis shoe game is highly competitive with a lot of substitutes. Next, the movie theater can charge much more for popcorn because it is the only supplier of popcorn in the theater where consumers love to eat it. And finally, for 4, the pharmaceutical company here is going to mark up prices more because new antibiotics are typically both patent protected and difficult to produce, and many consumers will find it necessary. On to question 5, we're asked which of the following are true, and the only one that is true for a monopoly is that at maximum profit, marginal revenue is going to equal marginal cost. And now to question 6, we're asked what happens when marginal costs are cut in a monopoly. So we use the graph found in chapter 13 here. When the marginal cost line is lowered, the price of monopoly sets is actually lower so that more quantity can be produced, maximizing profits. And this is also what happens in a competitive industry. When costs of production are cut, the price will go down, but the quantity sold increases to make more profit.
Question 7. So, if the demand for a patented drug is highly inelastic versus elastic, when will profits be higher? Well, the more inelastic it is, the higher the profits will be, because consumers are less sensitive to price and they'll keep buying it when the price increases. Which of these two drugs is likely to be more important? That would be the drug for which demand elasticity is lower because, well, yeah, like I said, consumers will continue to buy it even when producers increase the price beyond its market value. Okay, so lure of profit. Well, they'll be naturally drawn toward drugs with few good substitutes because these will have lower elasticities of demand. An all-wise, benevolent government agency would do the same thing because we're looking at one of the good externalities of monopolies because there's scientific innovation and they're creating a new drug. Okay, question 8A. This is true. Price is greater than marginal cost in a monopoly. Okay, B is false. Price is not less than marginal revenue when a monopoly is producing a certain amount of output, because marginal revenue curve, it has 1/2 the slope of the demand curve, and price intersects the demand curve. C, monopolies maximizing its profits, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's true, as you can see on figure 13.3. You take the point where they intersect and then run that up to where it intersects the demand curve, and then that gives you the profit. Okay, if a government regulator sets a fixed price for monopoly lower than the unregulated price, it is typically raising marginal revenue of selling more output. This is true. Profit maximizing quantity is increased when governments impose regulations. In the US, government regulation of cable TV cut the price of premium channels down to average cost. True. It cut it down to keep it cheap. But this was basically removed later on when the benefits of monopoly started to outweigh the costs. When consumers have many options, monopoly markup is lower. True. More options means more substitutes, which means higher elasticity of demand, so monopolies aren't able to mark their prices up as high and get away with it. A patent is a government-created monopoly? Yeah, essentially. Basically, the government creates patents to protect intellectual property, so that creates barriers to entry for any other firms in the market. Okay, question 9. We filled out the total revenue according to the equations given, and same with total cost, and then we subtracted total revenue minus total cost to get total profit, and found that total profit is maximized at a quantity of 20. And then we graphed that. Fixed costs increase from 100 to 200. Does that change the shape? No. Does it shift the location? Yes. It shifts it left and down because demand decreases as the cost increases. So how does this explain why you can ignore fixed costs most of the time? It's because fixed cost is not changeable. There's nothing I can do about it in the short run, so it's not included when you're calculating total profit. The total profit would be maximized at the same quantity no matter the fixed cost.
For question 10, we want to look at a firm's best choice given the price formula as well as the fixed cost. For part A, we know that the price is equal to 100 minus quantity, and fixed cost is just $1,000. We know that a monopolist will produce a profit maximizing price where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. In equating those two, we find that the quantity produced is going to be 50, and the price correspondingly will be 50. We have our total revenue of $2,500, and the profit will just be the difference between the total revenue and the fixed cost, since there is no marginal cost, and that will give us $1,500, and that is bigger than zero, and that means the optimal level of profit is positive. If we apply the same principle to the scenario mentioned in part B, we find the quantity produced will be 1,000, therefore giving us a price of $1,000, total revenue of $1 million, and a profit of $100,000, and that is also a positive profit level. For part C, however, we see the fixed cost is $1,000, and here is the price formula. We get a quantity of 5 and a price of 60. The total revenue is going to be 300, while the fixed cost is 1,000. That gives us a negative profit, meaning the monopoly should never start up in the first place. Now for question 11, we're basically applying the same set of principles because we know the demand and the fixed cost and marginal cost. With scenario A, we acquired a total revenue. Plugging that in gives us the marginal revenue curve. We equate that with marginal cost, which is 10, and we get a quantity of 20. Giving us a price of $30, total revenue $600, and a total cost of $300, and in the end we find there's a profit of $300. For case B, it's the same set of principles. The marginal cost is still 10, which is equal to marginal revenue, but that gives us a quantity of 22.5, a price of 55, and a total revenue of 1237.5, and a total cost of 325, and a profit of 912.5. For case C, now the marginal cost is 20, which is equal to the marginal revenue. That gives us a quantity of 20, price of 60, total revenue of 1,200, and a total cost of 500, giving us a profit of 700. The markup, respectively, is $20, $45, $40, and percentage is 200%, 450, and 200%. For part C, we said the monopolist would not necessarily charge the same high price, because of first, government regulations might apply to keep them in check, and secondly, the higher price is detrimental to the business because fewer people would tend to buy it. and more units will be prevented from being traded.